film White Noise was released on Netflix in September of last year. It's about a train crashing, exploding, and burning toxic chemicals off into the atmosphere, creating a major health hazard for miles around, reflecting what just happened a few weeks ago in Ohio. White Noise was even filmed in the same area, just a few miles from Ground Zero in East Palestine. Some people will call this a coincidence, but these days, believing in coincidence can cost you your life. And there is more. Just 3 months before the train wreck, the city of East Palestine began adopting the MyID digital bracelet system into their local emergency services. Being touted as the ultimate ID system, MyID is a digital ID company dealing primarily with digital ID bracelets for the medical industry. Bracelets designed to make it easier for first responders to access your medical profile in the event of an unexpected emergency. And just a week before the crash, they began handing these bracelets out to all the residents of East Palestine. Also, 2 weeks before the crash, the CDC updated their page on vinyl chloride, removing their section on how it affects children and raising the safe exposure threshold. Neil Donald Walsh wrote, "There are no coincidences in the universe, only convergences of will, intent, and experience." Not only does the Ohio train crash appear to be a deliberate attack, it appears to potentially be a very deadly attack. 3 days after the train wreck, authorities called for a controlled release burn. Controlled in that they would initiate the spark that will burn all the chemicals and cargo together in a massive chemical fire, potentially putting millions of people's lives at risk. The vinyl chloride spill at Camp Lejeune was small in comparison to what happened this month in Ohio, but it still poisoned over 1 million people, and it took decades for the effects to materialize. A new federal lawsuit against Norfolk Southern alleges that 1.1 million pounds of vinyl chloride was spilled into the local environment. The vinyl chloride metabolite chloroethylene oxide attacks human DNA and can take years to start showing up as cancers and other disease. There is arguably no safe dose for exposure. Leading expert in the study of vinyl chloride, Dr. Julianne Baer, agrees and says that nobody should be drinking the local water. According to Dr. Baer, vinyl chloride gets transported into homes via the groundwater. She says it comes out of the water into the air, and that's really the major route of toxicity for the liver. It comes through the air. While some argue that burning it resolved these issues, that seems to be false. Dioxins are the deadly toxins behind Agent Orange and DDT. They are generated when chlorinated chemicals, like vinyl chloride, burn. In fact, the exact reaction that happened in East Palestine when they decided to burn vinyl chloride and PVC pellets together was arguably the most efficient and deadly way of dispersing dioxins into the environment, and could equate to being one of the biggest chemical weapons attacks in history. Some are saying that tens of millions of lives could now be at risk, and that number will keep growing so long as humanity dismisses these attacks as coincidence and continues to do nothing. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Yes, indeed. That's Greg Reese from InfoWars. There's a couple things about that report that we probably want to clean up for you. And we'll do that in just a minute. Welcome to, what is this? Number 222, Armor of Truth Live 222. That's got to mean something. You heard in that intro there a quote from Neil Donald Walsh. We'd like for you to just ignore that, because that's Neil Donald Walsh is one of the grandfathers of the New Age movement right now. That quote he made about will and that's nonsense. That's silly. But Greg Reese has given a pretty decent summary of what's been going on over the past few weeks in the news. There's one other problem there where, we'll talk about that as the show goes on. But generally, that is a nice, accurate depiction of what the narrative is. Today, we're going to be talking about scientific dictatorship and what that means. So let's take you right back to video for a moment. Let's listen to President Eisenhower in his farewell address to the nation. It's not going to be the military-industrial complex quote. We're looking for a different quote that is probably even more important for today. So listen to this. Be nice if you could hear that. There we go.
In our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
A scientific, technological elite. A scientific, technological elite. He said, yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that the public policy itself, that is your government, could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. Richard Fernandez has given a definition of the Great Reset in a book called Against the Great Reset, and I think it's apt. We'll use that here. Creating a morally guided war-footing bureaucracy to remake the world. He says, as a BBC summary of the Great Reset concept noted, with typical British understatement, it is less an engineering manual than a sweeping vision. The scope is huge, covering technology, climate change, the future of work, international security, and other themes. At the very least, it will mean specifying the moral code that will guide the enterprise. The moral code. A new morality. A compass that defines, using Encyclopedia Britannica's definition of religion, what is holy, sacred, absolute, spiritual, divine, or worthy of special reverence, or attitudes toward the broader human community or the natural world. Since the only way to solve the pandemic problem, for example, is to solve everything, the Great Reset becomes a blank check to do everything that is deemed good while avoiding evil. The obvious problem is identifying what is good and what is evil. We are under the direction now of a new theocracy. How did the scientific dictatorship of the 20th century begin? We'll start off there today, and at the end of the show this evening, we'll tell you how it's going to collapse. They're not going to win. We've told you that over and over here. Anytime mankind starts shooting for that one unified body of truth, God continues to confuse the languages. In earlier centuries, the ruling class controlled the masses through the more mystical belief systems, particularly sun worship. That, according to Albert Pike. But this would all change. There was a shift from a theocracy of the sun to a theocracy of science. Since the sun god and his various relations, including sons and wives, were, after several thousands of years of worship, beginning to fray around the edges in terms of believability, and commoners were beginning to grumble that this stuff is all made up. Well, the world controllers came up with a new and improved version of their mind control software that didn't depend upon the sun god or the moon goddess for ultimate authority. Priests and rituals were supplanted by a new breed of bookkeepers and a new methodology of bookkeeping. As the sun and moon cult lost some of its popularity, scientists were quick to take up some of the slack. According to their propaganda, the physical laws of the universe were the ultimate causative factors, and naturally those physical laws were only fathomable by the scientific elite, the holders of all that is true, the deciders, the experts. The official state-sanctioned religion of this theocracy was scientism. In his article, Shamans of Scientism, Michael Shermer describes scientism as such: a scientific worldview that encompasses natural explanations for all phenomena, eschews supernatural and paranormal speculations, and embraces empiricism and reason as the twin pillars of a philosophy of life appropriate for an age of science. At the heart of this new faith is the belief that the investigational methods of the natural sciences should be ecumenically imposed upon all fields of inquiry. This is scientism. The epistemology ostensibly eschews the supernatural and the mystical, yet paradoxically, scientism is underpinned by two forms of mysticism: empiricism and materialism. It is the religious conviction of the Masonic Lodge, for example, and its elite masters that science will eventually enable humanity to regain its lost divinity. We have forgotten who we are. Right? That's the New Age doctrine. We have to discover it again, they say. Thus, the ruling class has bestowed absolute primacy upon science and strives for its universal imposition upon all fields of inquiry. This is the core doctrine of scientism. This form of epistemological imperialism is not to be confused with legitimate science, the pursuit of scientific truths. Researcher Michael Hoffman makes this distinction in his book titled Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. He writes, "Science, when practiced as the application of man's God-given talents for the production of appropriate technology on a human scale, relief of misery, and the reverential exploration and appreciation of the glory of divine providence as revealed in nature, is a valuable, useful tool for mankind." Scientism is science gone mad, which is what we have today. He further elaborates on the folly of scientism by saying the reason that science is a bad master and a dangerous servant and ought to not be worshipped is that science, after all, is not objective. Science is fundamentally about the uses of measurement. What does not fit the yardstick of the scientist is discarded. This is an old philosophy known as positivism or logical positivism. Nothing supernatural must be considered. Scientific determinism has repeatedly excluded some data from its measurement and fudged other data. For example, Piltdown Man, a pure scam from the start, offered up to support long debunked theory of evolution, macroevolution, abiogenesis, in order to support the self-fulfilling nature of its own agenda, be it Darwinism or cut, burn, and poison methods of cancer treatment, unquote. Indeed, biases and presuppositions pervade the very fabric of the epistemic autocracy, the scientific dictatorship. Academia itself has become the official church for this cult of epistemological selectivity. Suddenly, ostensible control over everything knowable becomes the divine providence of godlike bookkeepers. Meanwhile, their opponents become heretics and are burned at the stake. Or today, that means marginalized by academia, marginalized by society and the government, kicked out of the public square. The doctrine of man playing God reaches its height in the philosophy of scientism, which makes it possible the complete mental, spiritual, and physical enslavement of mankind through technologies such as satellite and computer surveillance, control over information in general. What are you allowed to say about a train derailment? A state of affairs symbolized by the all-seeing eye above the unfinished pyramid on the U.S. $1 bill. This ritualistic enthronement and deification of the elite's bookkeepers reveals the satanic foundation of scientism, reiterating the contentions of Hoffman. The late great William Cooper said, the worship, a lot of different, from the study of knowledge, science, or technology. The worship of science or technology is Satanism in its purest form, and its god is Lucifer. Its secret symbol is the all-seeing eye in the pyramid, unquote. In other words, the scientific dictatorship represents the highest aspirations of the adversary himself. It is the theocracy of Satan. Ostensibly, this theocracy will be atheistic. However, atheism will only act as a catalyst for an enormous paradigm shift. This begins with the realization of a significant philosophical paradox intrinsic to atheism. Ron Carlson and Ed Decker explain this intrinsic paradox. It is philosophically impossible to be an atheist, since to be an atheist you must have infinite knowledge in order to know absolutely that there is no God. But to have infinite knowledge, you would have to be God yourself. It's hard to be God yourself and an atheist at the same time. Unquote. In order to be philosophically consistent, the atheist must eventually conclude that he or she is a God. This is also the mantra espoused by secular humanism, which remains closely aligned with atheism and Darwinism. And that is ultimately what underpins all of the scientific dictatorship. Atheism is merely a philosophical segue for humanism. In turn, humanism is merely a segue for another belief system. Whittaker Chambers, who was a former member of the communist underground in America, revealed this belief system when he said, quote, "Humanism is not new. It is, in fact, man's second oldest faith. Its promise was whispered in the first days of creation under the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Ye shall be as gods." At this point, it is beyond debate that the United States of America is under attack. The methods of the attack are not immediately obvious to the casual observer. Likewise, the days of being a casual observer in America are over. You no longer have an excuse for not knowing. This affects every single one of us. What we see happening around us can be classified as nonlinear warfare. It's not jackboot style. They don't need to fire bullets. They don't need to bring tanks out into the streets. This is nonlinear warfare. This is psychological warfare, control of the narrative, demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization on a grand scale and repeated over and over and over to bring down the United States, to create a world order that is multipolar, with not nations, but corporations. Plausible deniability is how this is worked out on the people. That is the ability to deny any involvement in something illegal or unethical, because there is no clear evidence to prove the involvement. The lack of evidence makes the denial credible or plausible. It's like the Mafia Don. He doesn't go out and whack the guy himself. He has someone do it for him. And he doesn't know the details. His hands are clean, but they're not. The use of the tactic of plausible deniability implies forethought, such as intentionally setting up the conditions to plausibly avoid responsibility for one's future actions. The term is used both in law and in politics. In politics, plausible deniability usually applies to the practice of keeping the leadership of a large organization uninformed about illicit actions that the organization is carrying out. The leaders then have plausible deniability if they are ever questioned about those illicit actions. In other words, they truly don't know the details of what happened, of any illegal actions, and so they are automatically clear of blame among men, but not before God. The term was first coined when the Church Committee A committee of the U.S. Senate was investigating U.S. intelligence agencies during the 1970s. This is when MK Ultra was brought out. This is when Mockingbird was brought out, where it was shown that the media is in fact infiltrated and controlled by the elites through the intelligence agencies. In fact, the committee found that the CIA had carried out a plot to try and assassinate Cuban leader Fidel Castro. The Church Committee believed that the president was supportive of the action. However, the president was able to plausibly deny any knowledge of the plot against Castro, since he truly had no knowledge of the details or the specifics of the plan. In modern politics, the term plausible deniability often comes up in discussions of political campaigns. Plausible deniability allows candidates to keep their hands clean when their campaigns or their supporters use unsavory tactics and launch dirty attacks against their opponents. Plausible deniability can also refer to a politician's attempt to test the waters by quietly trying out how the public might respond to this or that. And this is something that's run on the public constantly. Politicians, bureaucrats, and corporate spokesmen speak with a deliberate lack of clarity. You'll hear in a moment the EPA administrator, Michael Regan, doing just that, implying damaging things but never actually saying them. Using a combination of nonverbal communication, dog whistles, and implication in order to make allegations, avoid incriminating oneself, and ultimately remain free and clear of any responsibility. So the question we're asking here tonight, folks, is America under attack? Let's go ahead and welcome to the show the lovely Summer. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
There she is, folks. She's with us. Summer has some research and a little presentation to give tonight on this, what's been going on in East Palestine, Ohio, with this train derailment, and we'll get to that in just a bit. So just let us know, what's your overall take on what's been going on for the past few weeks and what we've seen when it comes to the train wreck. And then it comes, and then there's what? We've got all the other things. We've got
I think
fires everywhere.
Yeah. You've pretty much summed it up. It's like, okay, we're being controlled by technocrats, technical experts. The government is in cahoots with the corporations. We're definitely being attacked, and it's all plausible deniability. So we can just close the show out and...
Good night, everybody.
Good night. That's a show.
See you later.
The hammer comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security.
All right, just kidding.
That was just a joke, but not really. Yeah, that's my thoughts in a nutshell.
Well, last year around this time, the news cycle was saturated with stories of what certainly seemed like an open attack on all of us. Do you remember what it was? It was the attack on food manufacturing facilities in the United States. For about 3 months, an average of one major food manufacturing plant per week burned to the ground, for a total of like 16 of them. At the same time, reports were circulating of mass culling of livestock, including the kind that provide Americans with food. Also, traditional American farms were attacked in many ways, financially, for one. Land grabs. 1 year later, as we sit here today with March 2023 just around the corner, the narrative has not changed all that much. For the last several weeks, there seems to have been an unusual spike in accidents, crashes, fires, other disasters involving direct threats to the lives of Americans, short-term and long-term. And at the very least, it's a continuing narrative where the public is pitted against cold, detached bureaucrats and the scientific dictatorship That is the new world order. As it flexes its truth-flouting transhuman biceps as often as possible, we take you to East Palestine, Ohio. Following the catastrophe, which we will cover in much more depth in just a moment, this is a picture of, I fact-checked this one. I did what I could to find out the authenticity of this photo here. This is from a commercial airliner when they did the controlled burn. If you don't know the story, we'll explain all of this for you in just a bit. But look at that. Is that not frightening? That is the result of the controlled burn of all the chemicals that were the different, mostly vinyl chloride. But look at that mass of death. But this week we saw EPA Administrator Michael Regan, along with Governor DeWine and other officials, gather at a local resident's home to drink water directly from the taps, for the cameras, of course. And the message you'll take from this is, hey, look, we believe science.
For folks in East Palestine, a small town, only 4,000 or 5,000, it's deja vu all over again. Another day just brings more news of them getting a really raw deal after that train derailment and millions of pounds of chemicals spilled in their town. In today's edition, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg still won't show up, but admitted he should have spoken out earlier, whatever speaking out means, or whatever good speaking out does the people of East Palestine is unclear. The governor came to show off a new health clinic set up to help people suffering from effects of the cancer-causing chemicals, except there's no doctors at the health clinic right now. Norfolk Southern CEO did an interview with CNBC today, yet his company's rail cars with toxic chemicals still sit in people's backyards. Good news, though, is scientists say everything is fine.
Good news.
Speaking of Norfolk Southern scientists, the Huffington Post reports the EPA relied on Norfolk Southern rather than their own tests to declare everything safe. And rather than demand bottled water for the town,
That's going to be one of the big points that we're going to hit for you tonight, the fact that it's all about the testing. They come back and tell you it's all safe. Well, look, we tested. We went there. We tested the air, and what's coming back to us says that it's safe. But what are they testing for? Are they able to actually test for the things that could be present there? I'm going to present for you later my evidence, my opinion that no, they can't even test for some of the most dangerous toxins that could be there. But let's look at this dog and pony show that was the water drinking.
State officials did a dog and pony show laughing at how good the tap water tastes.
We believe in science.
There you go. We believe in science. Now he had to, of course, once, as we just mentioned, this is the politician. This is the plausible deniability.
So we don't feel like we're being your guinea pig, but we don't mind proving to you that we believe the water's
Okay.
Here's to Caroline.
I appreciate that.
Here's to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome.
That's good.
Oh, that's real good. I'll show you in just a moment a clip where this nice lady who's hosting all these officials, she says, as they've just drunk the water, that makes us feel better.
This is really
infuriating? Is that the word you're looking for?
Yeah. It's infuriating and it's grieving, and you're just kind of wondering, like, okay, is this just a set, or are these people really that trusting that they're just going to drink the tap water? Like, really?
Well, look, it's kind of like this. All things being equal, let's just assume that everything has it's been reported. Look, nothing it's not like someone's going to drink the water and if they fall over dead right there, oh, well, it's bad. And if they don't fall over dead, it's safe. That's what they want you to think. That's how they want you to think that science works.
Or if
Look,
they really have to drink that tap water, you know, what are they thinking? The people that are actually drinking that water as they're doing it, they're like, oh man, okay, I guess I
got to think that
bought the farm.
that Governor DeWine, he's there in the on the left there, guy that looks like he needs a brush and a hairbrush, and EPA Administrator Michael Regan there, and this guy. They see the guy on the right side of the screen there. He's not looking all that excited about having taken, but you know they did it. Give him credit for.
But he trusts the science.
Yeah. Incredible.
That
this
was
is
just,
what the.
You know, we
go ahead.
both just erupted. I just can't believe it. Obviously, people didn't buy it either because people are still just saying how outraged they are that they would say that the drinking water is safe. How could that be possible?
Well, of course they at this point now. This was actually, I don't know if this was like Monday of this week when this was, but
It's a couple days ago.
They didn't really have time. How could they have any good stuff?
Courtney Miller lives in East Palestine.
Hang on there, brother. How could they really have any good data on exactly how safe this water is at this point? They're there to do optics. It's optics.
Yeah, and we've been psyoped to death, so nobody knows what exactly they're looking at anymore.
Yeah. Leviticus 19:11 says, "You shall not steal, you shall not deal falsely." That means lie. Shall not lie to one another. Genesis 3, of course, is where the serpent says, "You will surely not die." You won't die. We'll drink the water. We'll show you.
Yeah, that's really a perfect bit in the Bible to bring out in this moment.
God says, "I hate and detest falsehood." Well, that's God. That's from Psalms. That's Psalm 119. "I hate and detest falsehood, but I love your law," says the psalmist. Proverbs 12:22. "The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in those who are trustworthy." So, all right, let's get you another one of these infuriating clips. Now, I don't know if this is. Let me see if this is where. No, this is not it. Oh yeah, let's see. Well,
What about the Rainbow Creek water?
Yeah, we'll see that too.
And it's just as bad now as it was.
So let's look at this. Here we go. Here's another clip of this. A different location.
Here's to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's not a different location. Same place. This is just a more a cleaner clip.
That makes us feel better.
Did you catch that? It makes us feel better. Let me put the captions on for those who might not.
Because they have to spell out what they want you to think.
Yeah. See there, that makes us feel better.
Mm-hmm.
That's pitiful. This lady, I you know.
Awesome.
That's good.
That makes us feel better.
Yeah, but it will continue. All right.
And they're just reassuring everybody, we'll continue. We're going to hang around. We're not going to leave you. We're going to be here. We'll come back and drink as much of this water as you want.
Here's to you. Okay.
Okay. So we believe the science, right? Is this a joke of some kind? CNN's Sarah Seidner did an interview with EPA Administrator Michael Regan, and we'll play some clips of this for you here. Starting at the 58-second mark, Regan is asked about the many residents of East Palestine, Ohio, who are reporting symptoms. And he has to be very careful, right? Plausible deniability. This is the scientific dictatorship at work. It's not about being truthful, being honest and sincere.
Palestine. There's new reporting this morning that the
Let's skip Don Lemon as much as we can. Let me jump right on ahead here. There we go.
You went in and with the governor drank a glass of water and said, look, things are okay. But I will tell you from one of the people that we spoke with yesterday from East Palestine, she said to us, look, when I take a shower, my skin burns. I have nausea, I have constant headaches, and I don't believe that this is safe to drink, that the soil is safe to plant anything in, and that the air is safe to breathe. What do you tell someone who's having symptoms like this? And she's not the only one.
Well, you know, I think that they have a lot of trauma in that community.
Boy, now let's just stop right there. This is not a good start. His answer to the people who are having symptoms.
Yeah, so he's like implying that it's psychosomatic.
What? They got a lot of trauma there, right? Let's just understand, they've had a lot of trauma. What they're feeling is probably not from the chemicals. It's probably from the trauma. Mm-hmm. That's gaslighting. Mm-hmm. Trained gaslighters. That's another way to look at plausible deniability. It's gaslighting.
It is.
And people are experiencing a lot of things. The first thing I would say is anybody experiencing.
Do you remember the definition that we just gave of plausible deniability? Right, saying something without saying anything, implying damaging things, right, without ever actually saying it, using the combination of nonverbal communication, dog whistles, and implication to avoid incriminating oneself. Now that's where Regan is sitting right now. He has this job because he's good at this. He doesn't have this job because he knows a lot about toxins and chemicals. He has this job because he knows how to do exactly what he's doing here.
Any adverse health impact, they should seek medical attention from their primary doctor.
Yeah, don't come to us with your complaints about you. Go to your doctor with that. We don't want to hear about it.
Or I was with the governor yesterday, and they just opened a new clinic where they can guide people to seek medical attention. You know, I see them, I hear them. I'm not second guessing their experiences. What I can say is the water that has been tested and the air that has been tested is coming back with no adverse health impact levels.
What is that? No adverse health impact levels. What is no adverse health impact levels? Now,
they always have to use that word impact too. That just irks me.
This right here is the head honcho at the EPA, which is an agency that is political, but science is at the core of what they do. The Environmental Protection Agency. It's supposed to make us
feel protected and safe.
You would think that the head of the EPA would have a strong knowledge of the science that he believes in so much.
But the gas stoves, right? The gas stoves are dangerous.
Right there. More dangerous than these toxins.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
This guy.
So we can provide the data, but if people are experiencing things, we're not going to second guess anyone's experience. I'm asking that they seek medical attention at the local level.
All he said there was, look, the data's back. They're not really sick. We're not about to say anything more than that. Just go to your doctor. But, hey, the tests have come back, and I can't remember how he said it now, the gobbledygook. But there is I can't remember what he said. It's just such a mess. Let's listen to some more of this.
To your point, you're saying you believe them, that they are going through these things. And to their point, though, they say, look, you have tested. They
Listen, he's not going to say he believes them. That's what's really interesting about this.
Realize that. But you can't test everything. Is it possible that some of these contaminants have made it into areas where they have not been tested and that there is still a danger there in East Palestine?
Listen, I trust the data. I trust the science.
Here we go. Over and over again. She asked him, or she implied, that, so you're saying you believe them, these people who actually lived there where this happened, who are actually impacted by this, whose lives may never be the same. No, he says, look, I trust the data. I believe the science. I don't believe these human beings who come to me. He doesn't. This guy is not a scientist to begin with. He believes what he's told.
From day one, we have been on the ground along with the state doing the testing. At EPA, we've deployed aerial testing, an airplane, high-tech airplane. We've deployed...
What does that even mean? We've deployed high-tech
Man,
airplane.
listen, you people need to just feel, because we got a high-tech airplane. We got a high-tech airplane, man. What are you so worried about?
It goes around and it tests every single thing possible.
We got drones.
Known to man.
Summer, relax. We got drones. We got drones. What are you worried about? This guy.
Mobile testing, a van that is going in and out of the communities.
One van, just
we got a van. We got a van. Don't talk to me about you're growing 3 arms. We got a van, man.
We have stationary air monitors all around the community.
We got okay, that's enough.
Strategically placed, and we have tested the indoor air quality of over 550 homes. Nothing is coming back that shows adverse health impacts, and we are testing for everything that was on that train. I also trust the testing protocol of the state. They have a very rigorous testing model, and they've tested the municipal water. I would say for those who are on private...
I know what's rigorous right now. The muscles in the back of his neck are pretty rigorous. That's for sure.
If you have not had your water tested, please contact the state. And as Governor DeWine has said, don't drink well water unless you have had those wells tested.
Okay, that's really important, because what you're saying is there is...
I just want to, have that well water tested, though, because, we want to be aware of who might actually have well water, too.
Yeah, well, we can't have that. In the future, you're not going to be allowed to have that well water, because...
Crazy.
I don't know. I think we might be getting close to the end of this. A couple interesting comments right at the end, too.
Always a possibility that contaminants can exist somewhere that has not been tested, and you need to...
She's doing pretty good. You have to... This is a pretty good interview. She's not... It's a CNN, too. It's not too bad. She's trying to keep him honest here.
Really be careful. I'm hoping that the state or the federal government pays for those tests. Is that something that is going to happen?
Listen, yesterday's announcement will ensure that Norfolk Southern pays for the mess that they've created. And so we are encouraging everyone, seek medical attention, ensure that the state and...
Talking points that he was given before he came out here today. Tell people to seek medical attention. All the reports are coming back to us with no adverse medical impacts. That must have been written on. He's got 2 or 3 talking points, and he's hitting them. And he ain't saying anything, though. He's not saying a word. He's not really answering any questions. He definitely doesn't believe the people who say they're sick.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure, too, that she was instructed to look like, all right, press him hard, look like you're really drilling deep.
Yeah, they couldn't interview him without him seeing the questions beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
Local health agencies understand those experiences, because as we force Norfolk Southern to take full accountability for what they've done, Norfolk Southern will pay for everything, and anything that we...
Nobody really cares about that when it comes to testing. The testing is not where the testing isn't going to prove anything, right? What are they actually testing for? How reliable are their tests? We don't really know. Nobody that lives there really knows. They just have to trust what they're told.
Norfolk Southern will reimburse us. They are the ones that caused this mess. They are the ones that are going to clean up and fix this mess.
Let me ask you how that's going to happen. What have you done so far as the EPA administrator and the EPA at large to push Norfolk Southern to do all of the things that you just mentioned, to take responsibility?
Yesterday's announcement sort of laid out the fact that we are transitioning from an emergency response phase, which was led by the state, with EPA supporting the state, into a cleanup, a longer-term cleanup phase. What I announced, using my legal authority, we can hold Norfolk Southern accountable. Number one, they will clean up every single, piece of debris, all of the contamination, to EPA specifications and satisfaction. Number two, they will pay for it, fully pay for it. At any moment, if we have to step in because they refuse to do anything, we will do the cleaning up ourselves. We can fine them up to $70,000 a day. And when we recoup our total cost, we can charge them 3 times the amount of the cost of the federal government. That is what the law provides for me. We're going to use the full extent of our oversight and enforcement to hold Norfolk Southern accountable.
Nobody cares how much you're going to fine Norfolk Southern. Nobody cares about that. The people that live there don't care what you're going to fine Norfolk Southern. They want some assurance that their lives aren't going to be completely derailed.
And they have to design a very specific work plan that's approved by EPA. So we're going to make sure that every single step is included, no stone is left unturned, because the fact of the matter is they caused this trauma to the community.
That's another talking point, right? That he was told to keep hitting on. They did this. Make sure you get that the blame is shifted out there.
And we're going to make sure that they pay for it.
Last question. You and I have traveled around. I have met up with you in places like Mississippi, West Virginia, on the water issue in this country. And the thing that keeps coming up over and over and over again is trust. The communities in these places that have dealt with something like this or that have had contaminated water, whether it be lead or bacteria, do not trust that they are going to be cared for. Yes. They don't trust the federal government, they don't trust the state government, they don't trust their local government, and they don't trust the companies who have done some of this in those specific cases. What are you going to do about the lack of trust?
Before he answers, let's just ask. Does anybody there or anywhere else in the United States or the world today have any reason to mistrust government officials today? Is there any reason why people would be a little bit leery about whether or not these officials actually have their best interest at heart? Let's hear this answer.
And they have reason for it, because sometimes they've been lied to.
Sometimes.
You know, I'll do what we talked about yesterday during the announcement, standing on the stage with Republicans and Democrats from 2 states at all levels of government. Our sole goal is to win back and earn the trust of the community. We recognize that there's a trust deficit. I sat down and did a community roundtable. I visited homes in the ground of East Palestine. I know that a trust deficit exists. They gave us some very prescribed solutions, and we're going to try to act on those. Part of it is just being extremely transparent, making information available, and allowing them to...
Yeah. For example, let's test what he just said. We want to be extremely transparent. Okay, how are you doing your testing? How about right here in this interview on CNN, explain how your testing is being done? He's not being transparent because they're not going to tell you that they use Norfolk Southern scientists to do the testing, right? How good is that testing going to be? Let's say that they do the best they can, even. Listen, in the article we were reading from the second smartest man in the world,
the second smartest guy in the world,
made it good. This is over on Substack. These are some folks who have made it their life's work.
Eric Copolino.
Right. To know about these very catastrophes, chemical spills and toxins. And in order for this to be done right, in order for testing to be done right, you need to have it sent to 2 different facilities who are objective as they can be, and make it as blind as possible. You know, have people
some placebos.
Have the people doing have them doing testing. Have people doing testing, soil or whatever that don't exactly know what they're testing. They're just given what to test for. It's called split sampling. I think it was was the point is split sampling, where you send samples off to 2 different labs to have them tested, 2 independent labs. Right? You don't have the company who caused the catastrophe. It's probably a conflict of interest to let their scientists do the testing. So enough of that. Enough. Let's let Mr. Regan off the hook now. The mainstream media has been reporting on this really in a way in such a way as to try to downplay the danger of the chemical exposure. Saying things like in the narrative, well, these train derailments, they're pretty common. They happen all the time. That might be true. In fact, there was the derailment in East Palestine was not even the first one to occur in Ohio this year. According to Newsweek, there was another derailment that happened on January 19th between Trinway and Adams Mill in Ohio. The cars were empty at the time, so nothing was leaked out and nobody got hurt. But Newsweek counts no fewer than 3 accidents, 3 other accidents, train accidents, derailments and such, in South Carolina alone already this year. Near Lake City on the 9th of January, near Loris, January 21st, and another in Emory on February 12th, as well as 2 train accidents in California, one each in metropolitan Detroit and Philadelphia, others in Alabama, Alaska, Louisiana, and Texas. Also, the derailment of a Union Pacific freight train in Gothenburg, Nebraska on February 21st. And that came after 3 coal trains had derailed in the area back in 2022. So, yeah, trains derailing, accidents on the tracks, it's fairly common. There are quite a few. There are thousands a year. But, folks, that's not the point. When you read a news story where they're saying, these train derailments and accidents are very common, that's not the point here. Train derailments that release hundreds of thousands of pounds, or it's hundreds of thousands of gallons, it's millions of pounds of toxic, noxious chemicals, gases, and toxins into the environment and into whole towns of people, and then blowing up, controlled burn, of toxic chemicals without really notifying residents of all the risks. That is not common. Now, Summer is going to let us hear what your take on what you've seen happen in this over the past week or so.
I wanted to start out by just kind of going through some of the rumors and narratives and PSYOPS that are in circulation. Here are just a few of them. That the chemical spill is just an excuse to get farmers off the land and take away vital farming land to grow food, that this disaster serves to create more economic hardship and chaos. So some people are just point blank saying they're going to make, maybe it's not technically as dangerous as what we think, and really it's just like a land grab. It's a way to disrupt farming. Some conspiracists are saying that this is just another invisible boogeyman, a chemical poison for everyone to get hysterical over, that we are once again being inundated with fear about death and things that can kill us, and the idea that people in power want us dead, right? Another one, that this is history's most deadly chemical spill that is multi-generational. It's dioxin, and it's going to kill millions, plant, human, animal life for years to come. Another narrative, that America is being attacked by a foreign enemy that's linked to the flight pattern of the Chinese balloons that went across the country. Yeah. So there's people out there saying that. Another one, that the globalist WEF Agenda 21 plan is going according to schedule, and that Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street are using their corporate immunity, privilege, and assets to set off strategic attacks to further the agenda, the Agenda 21 plans. So yeah, if you want to show that slide of the map.
CSX or,
that works.
Or Norfolk Southern?
Norfolk Southern.
There's Norfolk Southern.
Yeah, so we take a look at that, okay. Who are the top 10 owners of Norfolk Southern Corporation? And there they are. Vanguard Group, BlackRock, State Street.
Now, what's interesting about this, folks, too, those same investment entities there, Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street was on the other one. These are also majority stakeholders in mainstream media. For instance, what did you say about Fox News the other day? They own
Fox
majority
News
stake in
owns
Fox
more
News.
shares than CNN.
So the very people who actually own majority stakes in this also have control of the narrative.
Yeah, if you want to go back to that slide that you had on a moment ago, it breaks that down for people. Put that on the big one, the big view.
You're about the map?
Not the map, but the one the very first, that one.
There you
yeah,
go.
put that on the big screen.
Yeah. There you go.
Correct. So you can see the stats there about CNN, Fox News, ABC News, NBC News, CBS News, and there you go. Look at them all. Just take a look at those numbers. Largest shareholders, major shareholders, and there's sort of obviously a blackout about all of that, right? I mean, there's a couple people talking about this, but very few and far between. That connection there. So, another narrative that we're hearing about is that the Democrats are attacking the Republican red states, and that the country is further being divided by this, that's a strategy that's happening, that according to the EPA, the air and water are fine, as we've just been going through. It's fine to drink the water. People should go home and get on with their lives.
We're going to knock a big hole in that whole argument here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, that they just need to stop being led by the quote-unquote misinformation out there. And while we're at it, let's take a look at the latest MSM article today from CNN. So CNN basically was just saying one wheel's bearings temperature reached a critical level, 253 degrees Fahrenheit above the ambient temperature, and prompted an audible alarm that instructed the crew to slow and stop the train to inspect a hot axle. The train's engineer applied the train's brakes and additional braking after the alert of an overheating axle. During this deceleration, the wheel bearing failed. Car 23 derailed, and the train initiated an emergency brake application and came to a stop. After reading the preliminary report, Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost told CNN there's still a lot of facts he doesn't know about the situation, however. So as well, what CNN came forward and said today in this same article is something also super disturbing, and I think it's meant to be. They're saying that around 2 million gallons of firefighting water from the train derailment site are expected to be disposed of in Harris County, Texas, at a place called Texas Molecular.
Weird story.
Yeah, it's a weird story. Texas Molecular was hired to dispose of the dangerous water from the train derailment. So Texas Molecular said that the shipments began arriving last Wednesday. And this has caused a bit of a controversy because a lot of people weren't even informed that this was happening. So there was sort of a stink that they were making about this. And they said that about 500,000 gallons are already in the county. And the company is receiving about 20 trucks of water, of this contaminated water, a day. And they actually are saying that so far it's not really known how the water is being transported. So like the technicality of that. So we're left to wonder, will there be another accident with the transport of this contaminated water?
It's just right there waiting to happen, right? It's such an opportunity for that to happen all over again.
And is there a nefarious reason why the water is going to Texas and not a closer site, more near Ohio? So that's pretty weird. And then there's the conspiracy of why the CDC changed the toxic ratings for vinyl chlorides.
Now, that was in Greg Reese's open at the top of the show today. That's
right.
That's one of the points that he was hitting on there.
Yeah, so there was this interview the CDC told PolitiFact today, that the vinyl chloride profile update began months ago before the Ohio train derailment. Quote, "It is purely coincidental with respect to this accident and in fact fortuitous, as it provides information on minimal risk levels for this chemical and other critical information for risk managers to evaluate the situation on the ground and provide guidance about what is safe regarding measured levels of vinyl chloride." So they're taking this as an opportunity to say how fortuitous and how fortunate that we had a chance to go in and update the data to show that vinyl chloride is not as dangerous as we thought. So, you can go through that with a fine comb. But at the end of the day, still to hear that, hearing the CDC make these statements does not necessarily make me personally feel like there's any less.
You don't get that. You don't get the warm fuzzies.
Suspicious. Yeah.
No warm fuzzies on that.
Yeah, I mean, just because they started working on updating this like a few months ago doesn't necessarily say to me that there's nothing strange going on. And
the point to that, I'll just lay that out there, is because the reason people are suspicious of this kind of thing is because before the pandemic, all kinds of policies, for years, this was set up years in advance. And so right before the pandemic, and even after it had started, the CDC had changed
Event 201, Agenda 21, Rio.
Specifically, they changed the threshold, the definition for what a pandemic is, the definition for what a vaccine actually is.
Yeah, these are the kinds of things that we're trained to look for at this point.
Yeah, so anybody who's looking at that and is suspicious about it, you got to give them, you've got to allow them that after what we've been through for the past 3 years. It could be a coincidence, but people have good reason to be suspicious. We've been traumatized, for goodness sake.
Yeah. And then, of course, the elephant in the living room is that the issue and focus is not vinyl chloride per se, but rather what happened when the burned and combined other cargo, the other cargo and the chemicals, when that all collaborated together to burn in the train. So this is being touted by experts in dioxin as the actual dioxin event, of the world history. They're just saying that this is the largest dioxin plume in world history.
Yeah, we'll talk about dioxin here in just a moment, because that is really as Summer said, that's the elephant in the room. That's right, what nobody's talking about, at least in the media.
Yeah, in the mainstream media, you just hear about vinyl chloride and nobody's talking about dioxin. And then you want to add one more nice little layer on top of all of this is the airplane crash, where 5 people, really sad, passed away. And Wednesday, 5 employees en route to Oakwood Village site died in twin-engine plane crash in Arkansas. And it's the Bill and Hillary Clinton
nothing to see
airport.
here.
And they're independent, and they were going to evaluate what the cause of that explosion was there. And then all of these people pass away, and then there's a rumor that they were somehow involved with what had happened in the train disaster in Ohio beforehand somehow. So there's all these rumors circulating.
Well, of course, I'll show you this. Just in case anybody had any, you had any ideas about that. You've got MSN here to set you straight. Conspiracy theorists think a plane crash killing 5 scientists was orchestrated to halt an investigation into toxic train derailment. Folks, whether or not that's actually what happened here, once again, does that kind of thing ever happen? Has that ever happened? Has it ever happened in Little Rock, Arkansas? Has it? Come on, man. Now, some of you might be too young to remember the early 90s, and when Bill Clinton was governor in Arkansas, the things that went down there at the Mena airport, the 2 teenage boys who were now this is not, folks, this is not conspiracy theory. These things happened. These two boys were murdered. They found their bodies on the train tracks, and they didn't die on the tracks. They got too close to a large operation where cocaine was being. We're on YouTube, right? I have to be.
Yes, we are on YouTube.
Folks, if you don't see us next week, this is why. Where they were flying cocaine in from South America into this Mina airport. That was Barry Seal was the guy there. They made a movie about Barry Seal. Tom Cruise played him. And they brought cocaine into the Mina airport. Now this was a CIA operation, and they used the Mina airport because Bill Clinton was the governor there. This is a friendly place, and so he had control of all the state troopers. These two teenagers got a little too close. They started snooping around the airport there. They started, this is the kind of thing that can't get out. We can't let this operation is working so well. This is along the same time when the crack cocaine epidemic breaks out in South Central Los Angeles. How did the crack get there? Well, it's long since been known that was also where the cocaine brought in from South America was eventually prepared, cooked into, taken to L.A., and then you had this crack epidemic. Now, the money from that, there was guns taken back to the people in South America for cocaine, and I guess this was also loosely connected to the Iran-Contra scandal. So anyway.
Yeah, it's just like the classic, why would you think that there's a conspiracy going on?
Like this article here, conspiracy theorists, crazy conspiracy. There's absolutely no reason for anybody to be thinking anything like this, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Little Rock, Arkansas, folks, they're never going to live that down. So if a plane crashes with scientists in it right after, in a time like this when we see the government really trying to cover things up and they're corrupt, they cannot be trusted. Look, whether or not they were taken down or not, people are justified in being suspicious about all of this right now.
Yeah, and then, you line that up with the sheer number of chemical fires, explosions, fires this week, and they try to normalize this. That's just the tactic is normalizing this and generating facts and figures to sort of show how, but this is just, this is something that happens in reality. The other thing, though, the other component that I was just, that came to my mind is people in power, right? People in power, they get tips that allow them to prepare ahead. So, for example, many of you know that I lived in Indonesia for many years, and there it's actually a lot easier to see. It's more transparent. You can see how corruption works. And it's very common that investors who weren't getting maybe the desired results on their return on investment would instigate a controlled burn to get rid of a property or a business. What seems plausible to me is that businessmen and big business could also be pulling out of business investments that have made, that they're going to try to cash in to get a bit of a insurance policy, or just cut losses before a major event takes place, or perhaps they have a real insider knowledge of what's going on in the U.S., how things are really approaching. Because now these articles are coming out more and more about the BRIC, right? So if you could put that slide up on the BRIC: Brazil, Russia, India, China. Yeah, this right here. So just a couple of days ago, you've got the CEO coming out and saying that collectively known as BRICS nations are coalescing against the dollar. He expects that an economic collapse and suggests that it will be the time for the Great Reset to take place, with the central bank digital currencies being ushered in. So you see all these explosions and these warehouses and all this chaos and these burnings and stuff like that too. So there could be a component of people are going, okay, everything's the crap's about to hit the fan, and so let me just go ahead and get in and try to level my business so that I can cut my losses and get out of here before things get crazy, while things are still civilized. So that came to my mind. And on the world scene as well, I would say, Brad and I were talking about this, that the train incident works by design also to prompt outrage across the world towards America. Like we were reading in Chinese publications, for example, like the Chinese were actually first on the scene covering this. Like it was in their social media first, the whole train explosion. And they were like, we cannot believe that they decided to burn the chemicals. Like that's the absolute wrong thing to do. So what this will do too is it is going to prompt more outrage across the world towards America and this idea of the evil capitalism. And then that's when I want to turn our attention to the Vice News article and the NPR article, if you can. So this narrative, right? It aids to justify the UN's climate and sustainability goals in ways that so they can massage and manipulate this narrative for their purposes, because you see lines in the Vice News article that say there's no toxic spill conspiracy except for everyday conspiracy of American capitalism. This happens constantly in America. The East Palestine disaster raises public awareness of toxic spills, which are disturbingly constant feature of the U.S. capitalism. Toxic material is the ambient noise of American capitalism. So you've got all of this rhetoric about just how evil we are and how we handle everything like we're playing with toys and we're irresponsible. And it's just like, because also in the Chinese social media as well, like people were like basically happy that it happened to us and we're just giving us a hard time and we're not showing any empathy or compassion. So there's a lot of prongs to this. There's a lot of prongs. There's a lot of aspects to how this is going to play out. And it's just going to be interesting to see what comes into fruition over the next few weeks. But the main thing, too, is they can just hide their deliberate attacks behind excuses of human error, which once again comes back to the plausible deniability.
No doubt.
Yeah. So it's like, just lastly, I'll say that, they're basically one of two scenarios here. A, the biggest dioxin spill in the world has actually happened, but they're lying and telling you that the water is perfectly safe and that you have nothing to worry about. Or B, even if there is no serious threat of dioxin poisoning, the people, the economy, the farmland, and the water filtration facilities will still be impacted in a very real way. That lets me also think about the story about Bill Gates that's also circulating with his water filtration business that he just, got in on recently.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, but either way, the outcome is either way, it will be devastating on either side of this equation, whether it's fact or fiction. It's going to have a very real consequence. And we just went through that, obviously, on a worldwide scale with the pandemic, so. There's no doubt that with the utility power grid, the infrastructure of the U.S. railways and the food plants, that there's definitely something. America is under attack, for sure.
2 days ago, it might be 3 days ago now, in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, there was also, just to add fuel to the fire, if you will, the facility there in Oak Ridge where uranium is processed. There was a fire. Let's see. Yeah, there. So now the reason we're bringing this up is it's interesting what the World Health Organization did right after that. So these things are just coming. Things are moving so fast right now that it's hard to keep up with. So. Building 9212 at the Y-12 National Nuclear Security Complex in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Wednesday at 9:15 a.m. There was a fire. Let's see. Do we have? I think I've got the picture. Yeah, there it is. There's a picture of the fire at a nuclear facility. And yeah, it wasn't just, a fire in the break room. The uranium had caught fire. This building is where they process uranium. It is listed on the Department of Energy's website. Serves as one of the primary production facilities for chemical processing and enriched uranium. This facility was built in 1945. It's going to be replaced in a couple years. But spokesman for the facility confirmed that the material involved in the fire was a compound of uranium. Those compounds they can either come in metallic forms or they can be in solutions. Things went okay. The site activated standard emergency protocols. The spokesperson said emergency services responded to the event, been in close contact with local and state officials. But roughly 200 employees were evacuated from the building, with all employees were accounted for, so that's good. That's a blessing. And all the buildings around were evacuated as well. No injuries. That's good. They did make a point to state that the first priority is the employees, and then after that, they prioritize the environment, the people around there. So, by the way, I'm getting a report in right now. It seems that there's a word out from the EPA now. The EPA is on the scene, and they have declared the site perfectly safe. And yes, workers can now return to their desks immediately. Supervisors are encouraged to drink a glass of uranium solution just to put all the fears at ease. Where's my... Thank you very much. Thought I would try one out there. But here's what's weird about that. Look at this. January 29th, just a couple weeks ago, the World Health Organization updates the list of medicines that governments should stockpile in case of a nuclear emergency.
Right.
Come on now. They released an updated report detailing medications that governments should have on hand in the event of a radiological or nuclear emergency, saying governments should be prepared for radiological disasters that can result from an accident at a power plant or the intentional detonation of a nuclear bomb in armed conflict. Now with Russia-Ukraine conflict, and there's, at least in Europe, there seems to be a fear of that happening there. The report reads, "It is essential that governments are prepared to protect the health of populations and respond immediately to emergencies." I don't think anybody trusts the World Health Organization when they say they're concerned about the health of populations. Dr. Maria Niera, the acting assistant director general at the World Health Organization for the moment, said in a statement on Friday, "This includes having ready supplies of life-saving medicines that will reduce risks and treat injuries from radiation." They're saying that you should have on hand things like PPE, personal protective equipment, pharmaceuticals, potassium iodide, antiemetics, antidiarrheals, things like that. They also said, the World Health Organization said more novel treatments could be on the way. We're real excited about that coming out of the World Health Organization. They say, quote, "Research is making progress in developing novel treatments and achieving technical advances that may result in new products for use during a radiation emergency." So there's that also. Now we've got, let's see here, I jumped way ahead. Yeah, there's that picture of over East Palestine again. That's just really a spooky image there of that was from the controlled burn.
It is spooky.
Yeah.
It looks like the gates of hell have been opened.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, they also this happened. Now this news report is from January 26th. Just a week or so before the train derailed. East Palestine was just about to receive their My ID bracelets, their medical bracelets. And isn't it convenient that now there's a big possible health crisis in the area to put those ID bracelets to good use, according to them. They say we're not doing this to gain anybody's information, to try and steal anybody's information. We're doing this to help the public in medical emergencies, said one of the directors. So this is one of those devices that holds, it's got a chip on it and it holds your medical. Who knows what it holds? Let's just be honest. Who knows what it holds? Provides My ID, the company, provides wearable devices or key fobs that have QR codes. Emergency responders can use a camera phone to access important medical information, like whether or not you're vaccine hesitant, perhaps. All of these.
Well, we know that now that already about over a year now, I guess, around that, that your doctor, if you went to your doctor, they have a code that they put in and they ask you if you've been vaccinated or not. And then if you say that you haven't been, then you're being tracked. Yeah.
Check this out. What the significance of that is. So this is just kind of fun. I thought I'd show this. This is back last week. This is 10 days ago. Governor DeWine, this is after the controlled burn. He brought this scientist, this scientist straight out of...
The scientist is funny, man.
This guy's right out of Central Casting.
Well, thank you, Governor. Let's begin by just talking about the chemicals. And the fact is that, for the most part, most of the chemicals that we're worried about and that we're talking about fall into a category known as volatile organic chemicals. And you heard that mentioned before, or compounds. Now, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, it's important for us to recognize, are actually a part of our everyday life. So if you go this afternoon on your way home to pump gas in your car.
I'm not going to go through this.
He looks like the popcorn guy.
Orville Redenbacher, at your service.
Yeah.
Monsieur Guy Gadbois.
At your service.
At your service. Look, this guy.
Inspector Clouseau.
He doesn't say anything that's not true here, but he's obviously there to put the people at ease. Look, these are things that you come into contact with all the time. That is true. But I make a choice to go pump gas. I don't have a reasonable expectation to be lying in my bed at night and huffing these toxins. So anyway, I just thought I'd share this with you. This looks like, something that was just one thing after another.
That's a really white coat.
It's a very white coat. Yeah, what did he have to wear the white coat to this? Could he not have just nice
he's very clean.
Polo shirt maybe, but no.
He's very clean and orderly.
He trots out. Governor DeWine he's a bit of a character himself, so he trots out this guy. Okay, and not only that, while all of this was going on, while this was happening in Ohio, there is some there also when you talk about the fact that there was a bit of an effort in the media to sort of overlook all this that seemed to be happening in the middle of a red state. And Biden was in Ukraine. He's actually visited Ukraine a lot, we're coming to find out, secretly. But he was there this past week. He went there secretly because they're at war, right? He went into a war zone, right? He braved it. He went into a war zone. Let's check this out. Oh no! Oh no! Bombs!
Oh my gosh, dangerous.
Look at that. Look at that image of strength and Here's another look at the air raid siren.
Everything's on high alert. High alert.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Wait, we're just gonna give
Make way for the leader. Make way for the leader.
We will go.
Right.
It's an air raid siren. Did these guys look particularly worried or afraid? Let's listen to what this CNN reporter had to say about this.
I've been here for the past 5 days. I have not heard any explosions. I have not heard any air sirens until about half an hour ago, right when President Biden was in the center of Kyiv, as Clarissa was just mentioning. I've been here for...
Point here, folks, is this. That was staged. No question about it. It was staged. That air raid siren was planned for that moment, for the cameras, especially, given everything that was happening back home. We've got, look how strong Joe Biden is. The guy, he's not afraid to go right into the middle of a war zone. Folks, this is not a war zone. Come on, not right there anyway. This reminds us of some things we've seen before. Let's take you back now to 1991.
Couple of explosions, what may have been an outgoing Patriot ground-to-air missile, some reported airbursts that may have been an intercept of an incoming Scud missile. We're really not sure. All we know is that the air...
By the way, it says, that's Chris Jaco, and there it says, CNN Live, Saudi Arabia. Folks, he's no more in Saudi Arabia than I'm in Saudi Arabia. This is a long since... well understood to be. This is how the Gulf War was covered. Let me continue.
Raid sirens have gone off, and we've heard the outgoing roar of at least one Patriot
See
missile.
That? Cleared by the Saudi government. This footage has been cleared by the Saudi government. There's no way for us to verify whether that's true at all. And in 1991, CNN didn't have a lot of competition when it came to this stuff. So they were able to just fake it. And they did fake it.
We've heard some sort of airburst. We can't tell where it was from where we are right now. We're waiting to see what's happening. As you can hear, the air raid sirens are still going off around us. People are, strangely enough, used to it. This is the first one of these attacks that's taken place early in the morning. But they're...
Don't you think it's curious
You
how...
need to put out a short with that, like the juxtaposition between the Biden visit and the Ukraine and then this, and then just back and forth, back and forth.
It's a bit curious, how the camera never pans around to show you all the commotion. Well, of course, that's for security reasons.
And there's no movement in the palm tree.
Anything other than what we've got now. What did you see there? Is that a missile going out? No. We're not quite sure. We can't show you anything else than what we're seeing right now because of military regulations. We're not allowed to show you.
Military regulations. That's why.
The missiles might be going. Watching and scanning the skies for something else coming in, but right now we can't see
this
much
was
of
the
anything.
low budget
Frankly,
coverage.
This is what we can
Back in the day, this is how you had to do it, and we all just believed it. We bid on it. Not for long. It wasn't but a few years after this people caught on to what was going on. But this was the first time Vietnam War was really the first time the media had been so involved in a war, and that was the start of where we hyper real wars where there's something going on the ground. People are firing weapons. There's something happening there, but the real war is taking place
in your mind,
in the media, in your mind. Yeah, that is a hyper real war. Today, all wars are hyper real wars. Just check out the end of this.
Show you on television right now because of military restrictions from both the Saudis and the U.S.
CD, if you need to take cover, I notice that
build,
you've got your...
Build the emotion. Look, she's got to play her role and make sure that everybody watching understands that this is a dire situation. Chris Jaco is really in Saudi Arabia, and he's really in danger.
gas mask in your hands. If you need to put it on, please do so. If you need to take cover, please do so. If you are...
Chris Jacobs like, please stop talking. This is my big moment.
If you
All
are
right,
able
we
to
are
take
now led to
questions.
understand that there are also firings in another city in Saudi Arabia. CNN's Carl Rochelle is here with me, just came up. Carl, I know we can't be very specific given these restrictions, but within those parameters, what did you see?
Well, what I saw, I didn't see anything hit. I looked almost straight above us. There is a vapor trail coming from my right to my left, and there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Look out. It's time. He's got to look at the helmet.
Oh,
my goodness.
Charles Jaco, CNN, reporting live from Saudi Arabia. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this shit. Look at it.
Can't believe that. Let me say hi.
The top 10 things about Saudi Arabia.
Now
Maybe we
they've
could
got
shorten
the
the list to
wind going.
5. Oh, God. Geopolitics by Dan Quayle.
This is the war zone,
Je suis un journaliste américain. Woof. Woof.
Danger. Danger.
Oh, I love this country so much. Standing down now, I'm gonna go get my hamburger and my coffee.
Good. We just got the all clear.
All clear. Every time I order something, this happens. All clear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I'm starting to get real bothered by all this.
Okay, that's enough. Now, Jean Baudrillard, who wrote Simulacra and Simulation, he was French sociologist, I guess, philosopher. He was hired by, I forget who it was, by some media agency in the Gulf War to cover the Gulf War for them. He decided to get a motel room, probably a hotel room, in London and cover the war from London, because that is where the war would take place, on CNN. That's how you cover that war. If you want to know what's happening, then you watch it right there on CNN. That's where the real war is happening, because that's where, this is whatever happens on CNN is what they want you to know, and that's what's important. And so he's Jean Baudrillard. Simulacra and Simulation, this is where the idea of the hyper-real comes from. The map is not the territory. We've moved so far off the map that we've lost any reference to the real terrain, the real land, the truth now. So anyway, that's, once again, it's just gotten more and more sophisticated. I'm not even sure what we can trust about our reality now. So this brings us to why is this so important? Why is this story about East Palestine so important for us today? This kind of thing happened in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, years ago. Not at this level, but it was dioxins that got into the drinking water. And also, we've got the story here about Times Beach, Missouri. And TruthStream Media has done a video on that, and I think that's probably the best way is to, let me make sure I get my timestamp on this. So right about here we go.
The streets sat empty, save for...
This is why it's important, because the people who live there, there's a decent chance that they may never go, their town may never be what it was. Again, or maybe today maybe this is what they want. Maybe they want to find out what happens to people who do live in an area that's fully contaminated. Don't put it past them. Don't put it past these people who have just successfully inoculated the whole world with an experimental juice that nobody really knows what it's doing. But this happened in 1982 in Missouri. And this is what can happen.
For the dark, windowless husks of decaying Times Beach. The street sat empty save for the dark, windowless husks of decaying, abandoned houses. And she would always tell me the story about how that was where everyone had to be evacuated because of toxic waste contamination, even though I was barely old enough to understand what that meant at first. Every time we'd drive by on our way out into St. Louis County to visit family, I'd get that tingly feeling in the pit of my stomach, knowing we were going to pass by it. In my young mind, I thought if any place was truly haunted, it had to be Times Beach.
I just remember it being one of those places of legend, you know. We drove this corridor a lot because it was I-44, so I just remember looking down there and you'd see all the houses still there. Streets, there were buildings, there were windowless buildings and street signs, and just no people. And it just looked like a movie set for a horror film or something.
The official story goes like this. 17 miles southwest of St. Louis sat Times Beach, a small community which began as a summer resort back in the 1920s. By the 1970s, it had become a low-income housing community with a population of 1,240 people that could not afford to pave its dusty roads. In an effort to control the dust, the city hired waste oil hauler Russell Bliss to spray them down, which he did multiple times between 1972 and 1976. The government would later claim Bliss obtained the dioxin-laced waste in 1971 from a Verona, Missouri chemical plant where toxic byproducts, including the byproduct of Agent Orange, was manufactured. Waste Bliss mixed in with the oils he sprayed on Times Beach roads as his means of disposing it. This plant would later show concentrations of dioxin at up to 2,000 times higher than that found in Agent Orange itself. By 1985, Times Beach was disincorporated, evacuated, and quarantined, save for one elderly couple who refused to leave. The town wasn't demolished until 1992. More than 265,000 tons of tainted soils were incinerated at the site beginning in 1996, and by 1999 all was declared well, and the state opened up a Route 66-themed park where the town once stood.
So out of this whole place filled with all this stuff, knickknacks and everything else, there's really just this one little corner that barely glosses over what actually happened.
There was nothing in there about those chemical companies. The chemical companies responsible for this weren't even mentioned.
The argument is they turned this into a Route 66 state park in Missouri, but the only reason they converted it to a state park is because they had to totally destroy the entire town, bury and burn it. Then they decided to paste that over to help people eventually forget about it. That's why it's not mentioned. And they just grabbed onto whatever was right there, which is Route 66.
The whole incident went down as the largest civilian dioxin exposure in U.S. history, but between the time the roads were sprayed with several dangerous deadly chemicals and the time the EPA declared one of the greatest triumphs over environmental disaster had come to an end in 1997, a lot of conflicting information and unresolved details still leave many unanswered questions about Times Beach.
Dioxin, that's the elephant in the room. That's what no one seems to be talking about, except for a few folks who we were able to find, or Summer was able to find for us, who have been doing this research. This trace toxin, dioxin, this is what we want to talk to you about here tonight. It's our prayer that you come away from these presentations learning something about Scripture, learning more about who Christ is, and after all that you can take something away with you to help you understand what's happening in the world, and something personally that you can apply to your life to be a little more healthy, to be truly safer. And so what happened in Ohio, this is why it's important. Anywhere chlorine is present, not even burned, but present, you're going to get this substance, dioxin. It's a trace toxin, and it is of astonishing potency. It's created in any environment where chlorine is available or where hydrocarbons are burned, and that means anything from cornflakes to motor oil. That's what happened with the train wreck in East Palestine. Both chlorinated chemicals and ordinary cargo burned at the same time, and that multiplied the effect. The ash pit and the plume of smoke that spread and is now gradually settling into groundwater and into the soil is certain to contain chlorinated dioxins, and yet these are not being tested for. So when the EPA administrator tells you, hey, we're testing and nothing's coming back to us that's dangerous, well, what are you testing for? The demands are stepping up, though. Now the next step is making sure that the testing and analysis are honest. This is the hard part. As you'll hear from interviews and read in all these articles. What was the smartest guy in the world, his blog, what was his name again?
Eric Coppolino.
Coppolino. Eric Coppolino. He's one of the guys who, he is where we found this information. He says, real testing involves sending samples from the same location to two labs working independently under different contracts. It's called split sampling. Any other testing, especially in a case like this, is suspect. It's subject to manipulation. The whole dioxin issue leads back to two conclusions. One, there is no safe level of exposure to such a thing. So therefore, there is no acceptable level of contamination. So let the whole story about the CDC changing the levels for exposure to vinyl chloride, that's a red herring. That's not the point. They're happy for you to go down that path and start chasing what was the CDC doing, because then you're not on the real story. The real story is there is no safe level of this stuff. Dioxin is a multi-generational genetic and hormonal toxin. I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to define that for you right now. I may even have a graphic or two. Public and corporate authorities will deny the problem and engage the public and the press in a complicated game of dissembling the truth, plausible deniability, which in the past has included outright lying. Lying in scientific papers, which is not difficult to do these days. Lying to the press, lying in court. Look, when this much money and prison time is at stake, they'll do anything to avoid accountability. They will file fake lawsuits. They will burn down people's homes. They will do by any means necessary. They will cover their asses. The Ohio scenario is not merely about chemicals. It's about the intersection of science, politics, corporate interests, and human nature. And the situation is always playing out where people, their homes, their families, and their livelihoods are under siege. America is under attack, and this is one of the ways. It's not a fair fight. When people in a town like Times Beach, or specifically here in East Palestine, Ohio, it's not a fair fight for these people. People with little money who are under threat, to go up against lawyers who are being paid $1,000 an hour, and bureaucrats staying in hotels with meal allowances, driving government cars with nothing to lose, literally nothing to lose. There is an established game that takes place between the government and the public. This game has been played in history, in our recent history, at Love Canal. Love Canal was a place near Niagara Falls where a town was planned, a model community was planned. The man who planned the community, his name was Love. So at this time, this was in the early 1900s. He wanted to build a canal connecting two rivers. The idea there was so that it could produce power. From the river, they could produce power and have their own power in this little model community. So for whatever reason, that fell through, and a chemical company bought the land and ended up where they had begun to dig this canal but never finished. They used that as a chemical dumping hole, as a ditch. After they sufficiently filled that up, barrels and barrels of toxic waste, they covered it over and sold it back to the county for $1, which is a terrible deal. It was just nothing but trouble after that. There was actually a community that was built on that site, and later on, years later, the barrels started rising to the surface. The chemicals were leaching out because the barrels were disintegrating and rotting, and people were just inundated. They were birth defects. See, the problem is with the EPA administrator earlier, you can stand there and drink the water and say you believe the science, but when you live there and you're exposed to this stuff day after day, that's where the danger. What's up, son?
Yeah, and what we know about dioxin is it gets into the body and it takes a long time before it actually shows up. And, obviously, like if it's in the plants and then it's in the fish, and then as each thing eats the other, it gets a higher concentration as well. And so,
yeah, I want to talk about that, about how it affects us. So that's Love Canal. We've got Times Beach, the Five Rivers area. We got at the State University of New York, New Paltz, between vets and the Veterans Administration, and many other places. It's the same everywhere. There are no exceptions. Dioxin means deception. The same playbook shows up over and over again. Plausible deniability, minimizing the dangers. This is a scientific dictatorship, my friends. Dishonest testing irregularities, including losing samples or losing results, testing for the wrong chemicals, propping up shills to say everything is safe, referring to or creating fraudulent studies, creating endless delays, and many other things. And sadly, in most instances, the public tends to jump on board and accept the reassurance they're being sold. And the public is happy to pretend that there is no problem. So most people cannot wrap their minds around the nature of a substance that is measured in quadrillionths of a gram. It's called femtograms. That's how little of this substance is necessary to cause a problem. Dioxin can be an acute poison, particularly to animals, young children, and babies, both preborn and born.
I was just thinking about fentanyl, the whole fentanyl issue, and how tiny amount of that can be fatal as well.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's 100 times stronger than
heroin.
It's a dangerous world, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This is a fallen world. It's dangerous out there right now.
It is.
This is not a time to be a free agent. You need to be safe. You need to be in Christ. You need to be in Christ, and you need to be anchored to your local church right now. You need to be with other believers, around a body of believers. This is a dangerous time. But dioxin is a cancer inducer and a cancer promoter. Perhaps more insidious than that, dioxin is a hormonal toxin. And that's what Coppolino wrote earlier. It is a multi-generational toxin that can remain for as many as 3 generations. What does that mean? Let's say I get exposed and I have dioxin in me. I think it's I don't understand. I haven't read enough about the science to understand where it hangs out. I think it gets into the fatty tissues. But let's say it affects my DNA, and I go and I have children, and I pass that on to my children, and they pass it on to theirs. For up to 3 generations it can remain. It can cause problems, birth defects for that long. There have been nearly 800 chemicals identified or suspected as hormone disruptors. These chemicals, these toxins, have become truly a global health crisis, a real global health crisis. You know it's a real crisis because the World Health Organization isn't talking about this one. These toxins are found almost everywhere. And we know these chemicals are in our bodies because studies have detected EDCs. These are hormone disrupting or endocrine disrupting chemicals, have been detected in blood, urine, and breast milk. They accumulate over time through consistent exposure to the tiniest amounts. Now, from the Cleveland Clinic, they have information on endocrine disrupting chemicals. The human body's endocrine system is an intricate network of glands throughout your body, including the pituitary gland, ovaries, testes, the thyroid. These glands secrete hormones that enter into your circulatory system, transport, travel, and then bind with receptors in other parts of the body. And when they get to the receptor and bind, they signal, or they tell your organs and tissues what to do and when to do it. So hormones help regulate many bodily functions, including growth and development, blood sugar control, metabolism and energy, blood pressure, reproductive processes, your appetite, weight control, digestion, sleep cycles, mood, just about everything. Toxins are artificial chemicals that interfere with the proper functioning of our hormones. So, endocrine disrupting chemicals, the way they cause harm is they cause disruption at the cellular level, and they can cause disruption at any point along the process, from the gland where the hormone is secreted and in transport, and right on down to the receptor. The term endocrine disrupting chemical refers to a man-made chemical that can interfere with your body's hormone functioning by, one, it can mimic hormones. It can fool your body into thinking that it is a hormone. Or it can block hormones from doing what they're supposed to do. There are, as I said earlier, just 800 chemicals like this that have been identified. Hundreds of them are thought to have these hormone disrupting effects. The most widespread and well-studied ones fall into 4 categories. You've probably heard about these: BPA, bisphenols, bisphenol A, BPA. It's found in food and beverage packaging, adhesives, many other consumer products. It can leach into food. This is one of the bottled water. I think now, for the most part, we don't have to worry so much about that now in our bottled water. But for a long time, that was the case. Studies have shown that most people have at least some BPA in their bodies. There's also phthalates. Phthalates are used to make plastics, or they're also used to make dissolving agents, other materials. They're also found in packaging, in medical tubing, detergents, automotive parts, cosmetics, lots of stuff. Lots of things that we encounter every day. And probably one of the worst on the list is the PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls. These chemicals have been banned in the U.S. Since the late 70s, but were widely used for decades in electrical equipment, paints, dyes, plastics, and rubber products. And because of that, a lot of that remains in the environment today. And then there is dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethanes and dichlorodiphenyl dichloroethylenes. This is DDT and DDE. Also banned now, but they are environmental pollutants. They've been banned in the U.S. These were pesticides. They're still used in a lot of other countries as pesticides. Do you know that they use DDT in Bali?
Yeah, they used like the reject stuff.
They used the worst of the worst.
Yeah. I remember living by a rice field and becoming suddenly incredibly allergic. Like, it was awful. I had to move.
Yeah, I'm sure seems like...
And with the rice farmers there, they made it to where they have to have their particular fertilizers in order for the rice to keep growing. Like, it's no longer a natural process.
Yeah, that gets down to the genetically modified stuff too. Well, because of the various ways that these endocrine disrupting chemicals can work, they're thought to contribute to an array of health problems over time. So once again, when the EPA administrator goes to the nice lady's home and he and the governor have a sip of water and they say, look, it's safe, that means nothing.
Bubkiss.
That means bubkiss. That is a deception. That is nothing but a deception. Studies have linked high levels of BPA, for example, with heart problems, greater risk of hormone-related cancers, among other things. Now, this is in our environment. And today, we even have our governments and a lot of our healthcare industry insisting that we go ahead and be inoculated with something that we can't really even talk about here on YouTube. But you all know by now that these jabs are not necessarily safe. There's also a suggestion that exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals can potentially play a role in the development of obesity, type 2 diabetes. So that was an interesting fact about these toxins. They can cause people to be obese. But here's the question: how are these effects studied? How do we come to know how these chemicals affect the human body? There are no volunteers for such a study. There are no people lining up to say, yes, contaminate me with dioxin study. That would be extremely unethical. So much of the experts' current understanding is based on animal research or trends in large populations. And here is why it sounds like it could be. I don't know. I'm running off here into high-octane speculation thanks to the Ice Age farmer. That's his term. But maybe that's what's going to be done there in EP, in Ohio. Maybe they're going to follow this town. They're going to they're saying it's safe. They don't know that it's safe. So for some reason, they want everybody back in their homes as quickly as possible. Why? Well, they've never been able to study a population who's been exposed to this stuff. Now they have the opportunity. Now that's pretty cynical. But we just came out of a scamdemic, didn't we? It's actually difficult to measure some of these chemicals in the human body. For many of these toxins, there is no test for them. That's why it's so frustrating to hear the EPA administrator and hear all these pundits and news talking heads. There's not even a test for most of this stuff. So it's hard to isolate their effects. What is known is that their effects develop over long periods of time and that they can last for generations. So what can you do? Here are some tips for minimizing your exposure. You don't have to be near a train derailment or a chemical fire. That makes it worse. But these toxins are in our everyday lives now. What you can do is you can consider choosing products that are BPA and phthalate free. These are terms that you can check for. There are products that are free of these substances. If you drink tap water that's been filtered.
I don't touch it.
I've been known to just, to be like a dog and get right under the tap and
That's horrible.
So I've lived, in a rural area all my life, but I'm happy to use a filter.
We don't do that in our household.
Well, we do have a filter on our sink, and I'm pretty confident in that filter. I did the research on it. I know what it filters, and it filters hormone disrupting chemicals, but once again, there are some of these things that you can't test for, so you don't know. So be smart, filter as much as you possibly can. Avoid microwaving plastics. Guilty again. Mm-hmm. Guilty again. I'm just gonna.
He's invincible. He's just forget it.
Either invincible, or one of these days I'm just going to vaporize. I'm going to just
go into a pile of mush.
Going to crumble.
You're gonna ooze with black goo.
Black goo. The nanotech's gonna come out.
Mm-hmm.
Avoid microwaving plastics. It's not a good idea. Do as I say, not as I do. Avoid personal care products that have fragrances in them, that have fragrance as an ingredient. Phthalates can often hide in fragrances. Choose products that are clearly labeled as phthalate free, and that is PHTHALAT. Phthalate. Phthalate. So that's what you want to make sure it's free of that. Make sure it's paraben free or BPA free. And listen.
Titanium dioxide and silicas are bad too. Don't do that. Don't do that. They put those in so many vitamins.
Yeah, these are metals that you don't necessarily want to have in your body if you can avoid it. Now, the last piece on the list here was what I found really, really sad based on what's happened in Ohio recently. Avoid unnecessary exposure to industrial chemicals and pesticides. For some people right now, that's not possible. Their homes are right in the middle of, a contaminated area.
Yeah, actually, shout out to Brian Brown. He's living 2 hours from this crash site. So
is he giving some? Really crowdsourcing the truth?
Well, he's saying that he's had a hard. I haven't been watching the chat the whole time, but I did see earlier where he said that he hasn't had really any luck figuring out which direction the wind blew, and he's definitely on the edge of his seat, trying to figure out where did it blow toward, and should he take off. So our prayers are with you, Brian.
And anyone else in that area, if you happen to be close to that area and you've got some direct experiences, email us at hello@armoroftruth.net. Let us know what's going on.
Yeah, if you want to share your story with us, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it here. It's one of the advantages that we have doing this kind of work is at the level we are. We're still it's quite easy for us to communicate with our viewers. So, yeah, please let us know if you're in the area. If you have any advice about what we're talking about here tonight, we'll put that together and we'll share it with the people. That's how it has to be done today. We all have to work together. There are no individual superstars. We all have to work together in this today.
Don't use their slogan.
I didn't say we're all in this together.
It was close. Yeah, but this is heavy. I mean, this is man, I can't stand that this has happened. It's horrible.
So, to wrap this up for you tonight. The transformation of the world into a scientific dictatorship has not happened overnight. It's been a slow, gradual process. In fact, gradualism has been the key to this, because the scientific dictatorship is founded on evolutionary theory. And evolution is a theory of gradual development. In fact, gradual development from non-life to life, which is insane. Richard Gardner delineated this piecemeal strategy in his Foreign Affairs article titled The Hard Road to World Order. In this article, Gardner asserts that instant world government is unattainable. They know this. They're playing the long game. That is what Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century, is all about. It has been at least in the works since 1972. At least, probably before that. Well, definitely before that in other forms. But when we're looking at climate issues and environmentalism, that's 72 with the Limits to Growth paper from the Club of Rome. They're in the long game, folks. They know they can't change this overnight. The house of world order will have to be built from the bottom up rather than from the top down. So that means that they're going to have to get a lot of the people bought into the plan or coerced. Gardner concludes that, quote, an end run around national sovereignty, eroding it piece by piece, will accomplish more than the old-fashioned frontal assault. This is what I meant earlier when I said this is not about, it's not done with jackboots, soldiers in the streets anymore. It's psychological warfare. The piecemeal approach was the chief method for establishing a worldwide scientific dictatorship through the 20th century. However, the 21st century has seen the elite's patient walk turn into a mad dash, especially over the last 3 years. Looking back to 9/11, the September 11th attacks, the Patriot Act, the establishment of the Office of Homeland Security, the war in Afghanistan, the second war in Iraq. These are all examples in the first wave, modern wave of this movement, of how the oligarchs seem to be accelerating their plans. More than a few researchers detect a sense of desperation among the elites. Why are they desperate? What is the reason for their haste? Why have they tried to push this thing so far, so fast in the past 3 years? Well, the system installed by the technocratic conspiracy for the introduction of a global scientific dictatorship is rapidly disintegrating. Faced with the inevitable dissolution of the various machinations comprising their apparatus of worldwide control, the ruling class is now attempting to stem the tide of destiny. This declension is made evident by 3 emerging crises. Now, whether or not these are really happening isn't the point. These are 3 emerging crises in the narrative. 1, the collapse of a global financial system. 2, the peaking of worldwide oil production. And 3rd, the lack of consensus among the elites. Now, that 3rd one there, I agree with big time. I don't think they get along. I don't think they always are able to work together. And I will tell you flat out here, they will never succeed in this plan they have. It's just like the Tower of Babel. God will continue to confuse the languages. The closer they think they are to the worldwide unity, just sit back and watch, folks. We know how the story ends. The maintenance of a technocracy calls for technological escalation. This was accomplished through the arms race that accompanied the Cold War. The Cold War ended with the United States outspending the Soviet Empire. And of course, as we know now, there was no real animosity there. There were there were moneyed elites, powerful elites behind the scenes. The Soviet Empire was just another puppet regime of those who do control the levers in the world, the levers of power in the world. Anthony Sutton, you can look his name up and read some of his books to find out the same people that created the tax-free foundations back in the 20s and 30s and 40s are the same people who were funding the Soviet Empire, funding the Nazi regime, running it all. All wars are bankers' wars. Russia's economic system collapsed, and the Soviet oligarchs had to orchestrate the end of communism, in order to preserve their dominance. However, the United States could in no way claim victory for itself. Tremendous military spending during the Cold War years had left America straddled with an enormous debt. After all, funding the world wars is not a cheap enterprise. Nothing was ever done to rectify the situation, and as a result, conditions only grew worse. Instead of corrective measures, the post-Cold War world saw the speculative stock market bubble of the 1990s. Today, America faces a $38 trillion debt pyramid. Now, this is a few years ago, this report here. A $38 trillion debt pyramid and over $100 trillion in highly leveraged derivatives. So debt, it is a debt system. To keep the system afloat, money has been squeezed out of the world economy. This caused economic grief abroad and only acted to delay the inevitable. Now, the Federal Reserve is trying to prevent the collapse of the stock market bubble by lowering interest rates and running the printing presses. Now, this is early 2000s, right? This is the story right after 9/11. The expansion of credit could temporarily prevent collapse, but it does not eliminate the stock market bubble. Instead, it resurrects the bubble and guarantees harsher conditions once that bubble collapses. We say this to point out that globalization has integrated national economies into a global system of financial interdependence. If you can get nations in debt, then you have control of them. If you're the IMF, if you're the global bankers. So the collapse of one segment guarantees the eventual collapse of the entire system. In short, the new economic order is a house of cards waiting to fall by design. Another factor contributing to the erection of a global scientific dictatorship is the elite's dominance over the planet's vital resources. The primary resource controlled by the elite up until still today, but up until a few years ago where they've branched out into other ventures. But the primary resource controlled by the elite is oil. That is why the American dollar, not backed by anything, is seen to be is called a petrodollar. It has value because the United States controls a lot of oil, a lot of resources. That has to change for the new world order to take shape. Alternatives to oil have been effectively suppressed. You could have a car that runs on water. There's no need for all these huge lithium batteries that are dangerous. You could have a car that would run on water. I don't know how efficient it would be, but we've seen it. But this has been suppressed. Certain electric car technologies have been suppressed. So, leaving the world almost totally dependent on the black gold to run their cars, factories, and machines and heat their homes. In fact, I don't take a pessimistic approach to fossil fuels. I think that the right use of fossil fuels is the way to go. This is what the Lord has provided for us. It's our greatest energy resource, right? When you use fossil fuels, when you use gasoline, you're using the power of the sun. Anyway, at the same time, the oligarchs have gained monopolies over a majority of the world's oil fields. course, this means that those who are dependent on oil, which is the vast majority of the planet's population, they all have to bow down at the feet of the blue bloods and learn not to bite the hand that feeds. To a large degree, the profits from oil have been used by the blue bloods, by the elites, to fund their ultimate project, which is the erection, the establishment of the global scientific dictatorship. And today, the narrative would have you believe that they're trying to shift everything over into green energy. Never going to happen. It's not valuable like oil is. However, this component of ruling class dominance is beginning to fall apart. And this is what we're reporting to you. We want you to don't fear these men. Fear of man is a snare, after all. Fear the Lord. Internal conflict among the elites presents a unique problem for these would-be gods of the global scientific dictatorship. There's never been a perfect harmony within the ranks of the elites. However, there has always been enough cohesion just to keep them in power and to keep the masses in line. After all, the one thing that all the dictatorship, the ruling class parties agree upon is that the commoners must be treated like children and kept in the playpen. As the kings of the New World Order become preoccupied with shaking their fists at one another, the global financial system is breaking down, and the natives are growing restless. You can see this. There's evidence of this in the world. You can see more people than ever are aware that there's a problem. A lot of people are so-called waking up. Plagued by enemies from without and within, the elite are facing the ultimate juggling contest. It's doubtful that the experts of the technocracy can provide the solutions necessary for victory. So let's go back to their own words. In Morals and Dogma, 33rd degree Freemason Albert Pike made a stunning confession concerning the deity, the God of the coming technocratic world government. Page 254 of Morals and Dogma, Albert Pike says, the sun god created nothing. Indeed, the sun god has never created anything. That's because he is Satan, the sworn enemy of the Creator, the true Creator. As Jesus made clear, Satan comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. John 10:10. The devil is no creator. He is a created being. The devil is under the authority of the one who created him. And the same holds true for his human servants. Examining the Hegelian tradition of the technocratic elite, Anthony Sutton made the following observation. Quote, indeed, it is ironic that a dictatorship that claims to be scientific would suppress or ignore scientific progress, would ignore genuine advances in science. This retrogressive paradigm is the very source of the scientific dictatorship's destruction. They have darkened minds. It's what motivates the elite to cling to their occult Darwinian doctrine, despite its state of scientific and logical bankruptcy. It is what inspires them to continue following an insane and unworkable evolutionary script toward the mirage of deification. It is what has caused them to deplete vital resources while simultaneously suppressing the few innovators who could develop viable alternative energies. low cost or even maybe free energies. Can't have that. If you can't put a meter on it, we can't have it. J.P. Morgan, I believe. It is what has guided their efforts to promulgate managed conflicts, managed wars, managed pandemics, which they hope will result in a harmonious dialectical synthesis of East and West. Finally, it is the very stake at the heart of the technocratic vampire. The scientific dictatorship is destroying itself. Its self-immolating pro-divinities are evident in its own icons and dictums, which are saturated in death. Theistic evolutionist William Winwood Reid, who was one of the chief inspirations for the Cecil Rhodes scholarship program and his whole operation. He declared, quote, "The law of nature is the law of death. Freemasonic altars are often adorned with skulls. The same holds true for the secret society of Skull and Bones." Have you ever noticed how the icons and the symbols of the secret societies all seem to be saturated in death? The 60s counterculture, which came to prominence through the efforts of Freemason Aldous Huxley, sported the Teutonic rune of death as its official emblem. Club of Rome, same thing. It is almost as if the conspiracy is painfully aware of its own impending demise. In fact, the devil does know that his time is short. The reason for the scientific dictatorship's defeat is simple. The Darwinian precept of survival of the fittest, the Hegelian dialectic of managed conflict, Malthusian population control, materialism's rejection of spiritual reality, humanism's contention that the ends justify the means, whatever it takes, by any means necessary. Eugenics, all of it is inherently false and is predicated upon death. Yet the one whom this scientific dictatorship seeks to dethrone holds something far greater than death. In John 10:10, Jesus Christ said, "I have come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly." The scriptures make it clear. 1 John 5:12, "He that has the Son has life, and he that has not the Son of God has not life." In short, the scientific dictatorship is fighting the very source of life itself. The one true living creator, God Almighty. In doing so, the technocrats have forsaken their own lives and they have embraced death. It is indeed a cult of death. The abortion industry shows us that. People screaming and fighting and willing to die for the right to kill. It is a cult of death. The scientific dictatorship can only end in one way. All right, that's it for tonight. The lovely Summer, would you like to have anything to say to our wonderful and intrepid supporters tonight?
Just everybody, please pray for Ohio. And we need lots of prayers.
Folks, if you appreciate what we do here and you want to support us, go to armoroftruth.net. Look at some of the articles. Look at what Summer's done with the website there. Plenty of information there. We have a collection of articles there in the Culture Vault. If you scroll down, you can see. There's the Culture Vault. We've also got the spiritual warfare, our spiritual warfare Bible study series available there. Tracking Dystopia, interviews with folks living in different regions around the world as to how they're seeing, what they're seeing happen where they are in other parts of the world. Reports from the world. You can listen to the Armor of Truth podcast there. And we do have some surprises coming for you soon. Can I say anything about that?
Yes, you can.
A mobile app. We will have for you soon a mobile app.
Lord willing. Lord willing.
Yeah, we will. We're working with some folks who are helping us put that together, and it is very good. What it means is that whenever we go live here or wherever we might be going live, if you have our mobile app, you will be notified. You don't have to worry about YouTube. Even if you want to watch us on YouTube, we'll send out that notification. And if you have the mobile app, you will be notified. So we're going to be providing that for you. And there'll be some exclusive content there available on the app that you won't be able to get anywhere else. And it's completely free. And Lord willing, in the future, maybe our show will be available for you out on Roku and Amazon Fire. You know, this has been a dream of mine for a long time, and you know, God does things on His schedule, not on mine. Go and if you would please subscribe to our backup YouTube channel, True Normal TV. That is where we do shows when we're shut down or being punished over here, which could happen at any moment, especially after tonight. And so please go there and go subscribe to True Normal TV. Help us get that channel over there up to 1,000 subscribers so we can have full function of our channel.
And our Substack too.
We do, yes, we do. We have a Substack. Substack now. We've got one article up on Substack now. We're going to be putting more up there. Those articles are going to be basically as we produce these shows, and we're doing so much reading and writing and the research, we have an opportunity to give more detailed information, stuff that you can, or really, when I write, what I like to write is stuff pointing us back to the scriptures and what we need to know today about what God has said, about how do we actually live in this world. So pay attention to Substack. And I think that's all that we've got for you tonight.
Yes.
2.5 hours, not too bad. It's not 4 hours. So I'd like to say thank you to lovely wife Summer for being with us, being with me, and all of us who are watching here tonight, for being patient.
Yeah,
and,
thank you guys.
Working hard.
For being out there too with us. Thank you, all the familiar faces in the chat tonight, and Rob and Brian Brown and John and Dell and Mo and Reed Romans. It's just good to see all you guys. Really good to see you guys tonight. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah, let me say hi to a couple of my guys at the Bible study. Andrew and Sean. If you guys are listening out there, thanks. All right, that's all we've got for you tonight. God bless you, my friends. We'll see you again here next time. Summer
from Atlanta.
Summer from Atlanta?
Yep.
Say good night.
Good night, guys. Take care. God bless.
The hammer comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security stick. And so that people learn to duck their head and not speak up. Because bad idea now.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
faith is resistance.
that would take humanity to new heights, to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.